Good morning. Welcome to the Kingsport News Hour on this 16th day, 16th day in the 5th month of the 16th year of Chungi. 16th day of the 5th month by the heavenly calendar in the 16th year of Chungi. Tim Elder sitting in for the second king of Chenuguk, and this is Wednesday, and on Wednesdays we sort of take a step back, kind of a midweek break, I guess, from the slings and arrows of the world, and take a look at the teachings of our true father, our true parent, Reverend Sung Myung Moon, because those teachings are in the background and my background foundation, whatever, of how we look at the world and how we look at our marriages, how we look at human beings and also how we look at spirit world and God's creation. And one of the most important aspects of True Father's teaching is the idea of the change of blood lineage. And this is something that does not exist in traditional Christianity, even though God has been working on this since time immemorial. And Jesus could be born of his mother Mary only because there was a change of blood lineage, and so Jesus was born as a sinless child, as the Son of God. But he was born of the womb of a fallen woman, despite what Catholics believe. But he was born from the womb of a Catholic, a fallen woman, a sinful woman who had original sin. And the wonderful thing about True Father and his work is that he now brings this grace of the change of blood lineage to people living in the 20th and 21st centuries. And when a person sort of begins to follow True Father, receiving the blessing becomes a kind of a big goal, if you understand True Father's teaching, because you learn that no one goes to heaven alone, but you can only go husband and wife, parents and children. And but in order for our marriages to last beyond death, they need to be marriages that have been done under the auspices of God and not Satan. And unfortunately, that also applies to marriages that are performed in the traditional Christian churches. Why? Because husband and wife still have original sin. Their lineage is still the lineage of Satan, which not their own fault. That's what they inherited from their parents, and then from their parents, their parents, their parents, all the way back to Adam and Eve, because Adam and Eve committed the fall and placed themselves under Satan, and in so doing, placed all of humanity under Satan. Because Cain and Abel were born, their children were born after they left, when they were kicked out of the Garden of Eden. And so all humanity is descended from Adam and Eve and from Cain, Abel, and Seth, the three children of Adam and Eve. And so we are here today. But now, in order to establish God's kingdom on the earth, we need to resolve this issue of original sin. And it's important because, you may have heard me say that I'm actually opposed to Elon Musk trying to colonize Mars right now, in this age. I think that we should not be scaling up, our the human race out into the universe until after we have resolved this issue of original sin. If we do it now, then there would just be more murders, more rapes, more wars on Mars and wherever else we go. So it's my strong opinion that we should wait until this original sin is resolved, and only those who are in God's lineage should be allowed to leave the earth, or leave the earth to other planets, or to certainly to if you're going to leave the solar system, definitely you need to be in God's lineage. We don't want to be spreading this evil virus all over the universe. It's bad enough that it's here on this earth. So when Father came to America he gathered the people who were following him soon after he arrived, or not, a few months after he arrived at the International Training Center, which was in Belvedere, which is that's a location in Tarrytown, New York. I don't know if it's still there. I don't know if we still own it, or if, what has happened to it. Obviously, Father's authority does not own it anymore, but this is an estate that was, along the Hudson River, that was originally created by, I don't know, one of the millionaires of the 20th century. And anyway, it was purchased by the church not long after Father arrived, and he used it as a training center. And in January of 1973, according to these dates that I see here, he gave a sort of a three-part sermon over a period of 4 days on the change of blood lineage. If it were, 10, 20 years later, I'm sure he would not have divided it into three parts. He would have done it, got the whole through in one day. But it was still early, right? He was still training people. He didn't expect them to stay with him for 10, 12, 15 hours. So anyway, last week we covered one big chunk of that first part of a father's sermon. And actually, we covered what he termed to be the introduction to this series. And so today I want to start by just sort of going over that introduction. Maybe some of you were not here last week. Maybe you were here, but you can't remember what Father said. So, and I'm getting this on tparents.org, by the way. You can just go there, tparents.org, and do a search for change of blood lineage, and you will see the change of blood lineage 1, 2, and 3 there in the list of the search results that come up. So anyway, Father began by saying, okay, we're going to talk about the change of blood lineage. And he says that God, if God is omnipotent, then he's not going to leave the world as it is right now. And then he goes into asking, okay, what is the most important thing in the world? He might say it's life. Okay, well, there's actually something that's even more important than life. There's something that that we would give up our life for. In other words, we would die for something. That is what? That is love. And so then he talks about love, but then he says, and so but then he points out that love cannot be enjoyed alone. No one can enjoy love alone. There always has to be a subject partner, object partner relationship. And love is something that goes between the subject object partner in that kind of relationship. And the same is true with God. God, although God is a God of love, he cannot experience love and the joy that comes from love unless he has an object partner, in other words, human beings, to whom he can give love and then receive joy and happiness as a result of that, as a result of investing love in human beings. So, and he talks about, suppose there's a man who's dancing and screaming out of joy by himself. You would say that he was probably crazy. Yes. So joy, love, happiness, all these things require some sort of a object partner. No one can do them. No one can experience those things by themselves. So then Father says that when God grieved as a result of the human fall, what exactly was that? Well, he said, if you don't have your object partner, you have nothing to lose. But without your object partner, you cannot even say you are sad if it is originally so. And by the way, we're inserting the word object in here because this speech was translated before we started using the object partner, subject partner translation. Originally, when people were translating Father's words, they were just saying subject and object, but then that got a kind of, it causes all sorts of confusion and misunderstanding. So what position were human beings in the beginning that God was made so sad at the loss of them due to the fall? So because human beings were created to be God's object partners of love, when he lost human beings, he lost his object partner of love. And so that is why God was so incredibly sad when the fall occurred. Then, let's see. So here, going down here, let's see here. And he said, well, how was it that Satan took this? How was it that Satan took Eve away? He said, well, first he says, well, it was first Eve that Satan took, and then Adam. But how was it that he took Eve? Because Lucifer gave Eve more love than what she was receiving from Adam. And I thought that was an incredibly important and insightful point that maybe I had not realized until now. That he tempted her, but he also gave her more love than what Adam was giving to her. So then, here, how on earth could they eat of that fruit if it was forbidden for them to eat by God? So then he said, well, it's really illogical to think that the fruit was a literal fruit and so forth. And so Eve was taken away by love. And also he says that God can resurrect life when it is lost, but he cannot resurrect love. That's a very important point. Love is something that must be perfected between male and female, and he had to wait until that time. With that conclusion in mind, we have to compare ours to what we find in the Bible. God is the God of principle, the God of logic, and he will apply the same principle of creating man when he has to recreate and restore man to the original position. So God does not create some new principle in order to restore human beings. He does not amend his original ideal of creation. The original ideal of creation is perfect. It can deal with any circumstance that may come along. It does not require any amendments or any revisions, any rewriting or anything like that. And so God simply applied the principle of creation to the process of restoring human beings when that time came when he needed to do that. Okay. So what did he do? Well, he must locate one male being. There has to be one male being. And so God's providence and restoration all throughout human history has been to locate a male being having nothing to do with sin, through whom God would develop the providence of restoration. In the beginning, God did not create Eve first, and he did not create Adam and Eve at the same time simultaneously. And he did not create Adam and Eve as sort of separate individuals, on separate continents or even separate, villages or separate valleys or anything like that, all right? He first created the man. And then what did he do? The Bible says he took a rib from the man, but that's probably symbolic in some way, I don't know. But what we do know is that God used the man's body to create the woman, to create Eve. And that's why when God showed Eve to Adam, he says, wow, bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh, which is how they used to say that, wow, she's really hot. And they don't say that anymore. But he really fell in love with her at first sight. Why? Because she resembled him. Because she came from a part of his body. Whether that was the rib or whatever, I don't know. But she resembled him. And that's the important point. And so here, when the Messiah comes, then the male person must be able to locate his spouse. So Jesus, when he came, he wanted to have a spouse. He wanted to be married. Just like Adam had a woman, Jesus, second Adam, according to the Bible, second Adam also needed to have a woman. Then what must be the first purpose of the Messiah's coming to the earth? To find Eve and raise her, and make her his bride. And Jesus, because of the failure of people around him, especially Mary and Joseph and Zechariah and John the Baptist, and we can go on and on, but he could not have a bride. And so he says here, that's why he had to die on the cross. That's why he had to die on the cross. Because then when he was not able to take a bride, when he was not able to plant God's lineage on this earth by creating a family on this earth, the second choice had to be that he would die on the cross as a voluntary sacrifice for the sins of humanity in order to open the way for spiritual salvation. So he gave his physical body over to Satan so that the spirit body could be resurrected from among the dead, and that he could gather his disciples over a 40-day period, and then when they were ready to go, then he would ascend into heaven. Okay. So then once, if Adam and Eve had been able to follow God's commandment, they would have become the perfect subject and object partners, and and that is actually what has to be accomplished now. And I remind you, it has been accomplished now. When was it accomplished? When was it accomplished? It was accomplished in September 2017 with the cosmic perfection level blessing of true parents, cosmic level perfection of true father Sun Myung Moon to true mother Hyun Shil Kang. That is when finally, at the cosmic perfection level, father could have a spouse with him, right? Hak Jahan was his spouse at the formation level in 1960. 43 years later in 2003, Hak Jahan was again blessed to true father at the growth level. And father wanted very much to be blessed with her, or bless her again in 2010, 7 years after the growth level blessing in 2010. But she would not follow him. And he tried and tried to help her set the conditions that she would be absolutely obedient. But she would not. She would not do that. And so he delayed, gave her more time, gave her more time, gave her more time. And finally, 7 years after the original plan of 2010, 2017, he could wait no longer. And he was blessed with the true mother Hyun Shil Kang, our eternal true mother Hyun Shil Kang, at the cosmic perfection level. And so now that original ideal of God to have a man and a woman at this cosmic perfection level and completely united with each other, completely united with God, that original ideal was accomplished in September 23rd, 2017 by the Gregorian calendar, and by the heavenly calendar. It was in the 8th year of Cheongi, in the 8th month and 4th day by the heavenly calendar. So that was a cataclysmic event. That was the beginning of history, just like Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve's marriage would have been the beginning of history. So this, in 2017, was the beginning of the new history of humanity 2.0, began 2017, September 23rd, by the Gregorian calendar. So now we are in a completely different era, and we need to understand. But now we also have to become those true parents by receiving the blessing, by changing our blood lineage, so that we are not under Satan's dominion, so that our families not under, our descendants are not under Satan's dominion. So this is why Father, soon after he arrived in the United States, is emphasizing the change of blood lineage and helping American and European members to understand the change of blood lineage, its significance, and how important that is. And he's doing this through this series of 3 sermons. So I think it's very good that we are going through this again right now. Okay. So here, let's go here. This last sentence: with this done alone, with Adam and Eve, or the Messiah and his bride put together alone, they will form the perfect object partner to God as the subject partner, in whom the male and female qualities are already inherited. And then God can operate through them meaning the father and mother, okay? Through them, meaning the male and female joined at the cosmic perfection level, together with God, as the perfect object. And that's what makes it possible for God, to realize his restoration project. So the war has been won. It was won on September 23rd, 2017. The future is here, but just hasn't been evenly distributed, as one author said. The 66 books of the Bible reached the conclusion at this point. So that is when the 66 books of the Bible actually did reach their conclusion. All right, so then he's looking for that, here then he says, okay, so I have finished the introduction part. So all that was introduction, okay? And we have to reach there, pointing to the blackboard, the transition of blood lineage. When Father spoke, during the 70s, 80s, especially, he always spoke with a blackboard behind him, and chalk. All right, blackboard and chalk. This was the 70s technology. There was no PowerPoint. There was no PowerPoint. It was blackboard and chalk. And now, pointing to the blackboard, he says, we have to reach there. And that means the transition of blood lineage, the change of blood lineage. So changing the blood lineage from Satan's lineage to God's lineage. All right, so that was the introduction. So let's make some headway here on this, on the remainder of this sermon, and then we'll go into 2 and 3 in future Wednesdays, and we may be able to start part of 2 today. The human fall was caused by someone else staining the blood or the blood lineage of man through the fallen act. Someone else, of course, being Lucifer. So unless we can restore or shift the blood lineage into the original status, we cannot work the providence of restoration through man, through human beings. This is 1970s English, all right? God had to wait so long through more than 66,000 years of sinful human history because he wanted to commence his providence of restoration by finding one man having nothing to do with stained blood. 6,000 years, of course, being the biblical account of human history. And Father, in many places, indicates that actual human history is much, much longer than 6,000 years. I know anthropologists keep pushing it back. And even recently, I think they were finding other sort of artifacts that indicate that human history may have started much before that. But whenever it started, whenever it was that it started, the Bible's account is that it's 6,000 years. But of course, the first 2,000 years is symbolic, right? And then the second 2,000 years is kind of an image course. And then the third 2,000 years, that's the 2,000 years from Jesus until the present, is the actual substantial course. Okay. So here is a man, Reiner Vincenz. Reiner Vincenz was a European leader. Let's suppose that he has stained blood running through all his veins. He was actually blessed, I think, in the relatively early anyway. He was maybe he was 777 couple. I'm not sure. Probably 777 couple. So, 777 couples in 1970 were really the first time that non-Koreans were blessed. Well, there is an exception. There are some exceptions. In 1968, Father blessed one Japanese couple. That was Mr. Kuboki and his wife. And then also in 1969, he went around the world blessing, 43 couples, 12 in Japan, I think. He had 12 in Japan and some in the United States and some in Germany. Right, and then and in the United States, Wesley Samuel was one of the couples blessed in that 1969 blessing. And when Wesley passed into spirit world several years back, he left in his will that he wanted his songma to be performed at the sanctuary church under the authority of the second king of Cheongguk. And so his children actually flew his remains from Florida to Pennsylvania, and we worked with a funeral home near Newfoundland, and they arranged all the legal technicalities for that to happen and so forth, and helped us with that. And so anyway, that was the 1969. And Reiner Vincenz, I believe, pretty sure he must have been blessed in 1970 as part of the 777 couple. So anyway, Reiner Vincenz, although he's, I think by this time already blessed, let's suppose that he has stained blood running through all his veins. So you take him to the river and wash him all through 6,000 years, trying to bleach him, doing everything you can to purify him. Can you accomplish that? Can you drain out all his stained blood? That's possible. That's impossible. If you die away, then both God and Satan will lose someone on whom to work. Because when we are, as long as human beings are alive, both God and Satan have claim on us, because God has claim on us because he created us. Satan also has claim on us because Adam and Eve placed themselves and all their descendants, including us, under Satan's dominion. And so Satan's blood, as Father says here, runs in us. And so Satan also has claim. And so we're always going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So, sometimes when someone is refusing to accept true Father and so forth, and someone gets frustrated that it's taking too much time for them to accept Father and accept the principle, I remind them, listen, the one thing good about fallen human beings is that they change. They change. They go back and forth. That's the bad thing, but they change. They may, like sometimes a 2-year-old, right, will hold their breath and say, I'm never going to breathe again, until you give me my cookie. I want before you, they try to blackmail their parents, right, by holding their breath. Same principle. It doesn't go on forever. So anyway, if you die away, then both God and Satan will lose someone on whom to work. So both God and Satan had to work through human history with a condition in between, whether or not man would have a position on this side or that. So human beings set conditions, whether they put themselves on Satan's side or put themselves on God's side. There must be some law to apply here, but one thing you must know is that God, being a God of principle, cannot just take away anything unlawfully. So anything which will suit the law of the principle will come to his position. That's natural, very logical. Satan, on the other hand, being non-principled, can claim anything without law, and he can well claim non-principled things. So when someone sets a condition to be on Satan's side, for example, someone does not maintain sexual purity before marriage, or someone does not maintain fidelity in marriage, then that is definitely a very big condition that Satan can use to claim that person, because then that act is a non-principled act, whether it is losing sexual purity before marriage, or whether it is being unfaithful to your married spouse in marriage. According to the principle, things resembling God are God's. Man, too, if he doesn't resemble God, cannot be claimed by God. So remember, God created us, what? In his image. In his image. And Father says that this means that we resemble God. We are in his image. That means we resemble God. Or at least Adam and Eve, they were created to resemble God. But when Adam and Eve fell, they no longer resembled God. And so they could not be claimed by God. They did not resemble God. Why? Because they did not follow the principle. They did not follow the commandment that God gave them to maintain their sexual purity until such time as God could bless them in marriage. And so, but of course, don't think that there's no hope once you make a mistake. There's always a way back to God. And God wants everyone to eventually, okay, that's a big word, eventually make it into the kingdom of heaven. Eventually. Some will spend a long time, I suspect. Somewhere short of the kingdom of heaven. Or it could be that we will all wait until everybody else is ready. And then one day, ready, set, go, we will all take a big step into the kingdom of heaven. I don't know. I don't know how it's going to happen. God created it. God created human beings. Okay. Again, I'm sort of correcting the 1970s English here. God created human beings and God. I'm sorry. This should be man, right? God created man, and man was in the lineage of God. So if your blood is stained, he cannot claim you as his. Due to the human fall, you know too well that you are from satanic blood lineage. Then whose blood is it which is running in you? Satan's. Your body, whom does it belong to? You hate to say it, but it belongs to Satan. And this is why St. Paul was even saying in the Bible, right? There seem to be two laws at work within him. He says, I want to do good, but then I wind up doing the opposite. And this is why, because there is this contradiction that is within human beings. There's no contradiction in God. So how is it that created beings, human beings, have contradiction? There's no contradiction in nature. There's no contradiction in cats and dogs or goldfish or flowers or trees or anything else. There's no contradiction. Very consistent. But there's a contradiction in human beings because human beings are the only ones that committed the fall. Your eyes, your mouth, your ears, everything you have belongs to Satan. Can you ever desire to belong to God if you are going to leave those as they are? Therefore, in religions of high dimension, they teach us not to use our eyes, nose, mouth, or ears in such a way that will please Satan. So don't look at pornography. Okay, don't say things with your mouth that will be displeasing to God. Or try not to hear things with your ears that will please Satan and not God. You must go the opposite way. So religious teaching will want you to deny what you have and what you are, and it starts from denial, not from approval or affirmation. And by denial, he's talking, for example, like monastic life, or going into nature and sort of into a monastery, something like that, or silence, for example, as they do in some Catholic monasteries, where you just deny yourself and you are striking your body by not eating as you normally would outside, or not eating certain foods, for example, meat or something like that. And the higher the religion is, the more strict the teaching is for that. Then are you ready to deny your eyes, your ears, your nose, your mouth? You must deny your life. That's what justifies the teaching of the Bible. It says that those who want to lose their lives will gain them, and those who want to gain their lives will lose them. Then do you want to kill yourselves? Are you ready to do that? I am pleased with the affirmative answer from you. I am glad that I have made you answer in the affirmative after 10 hours of talk. And so I don't think we've been covering this for 10 hours. This must be some kind of a summary. God created man with his word, the Bible says, and in the course of recreation too, the word will affect you. It is well said that the word will either kill you or bring you into life again. What I am saying is not from me. It is the word of truth from God. If you obey me and you have obeyed God, and you will be resurrected or recreated through the word, with the true words of God, the dead, corrupted world can come into life again. Can you believe that? Then we must be confident enough to be able to establish the kingdom of God on earth, because we know in what way we can do that. So it is by the word. And Father would often say that the number of people joining the Unification Church is a function of how often the Divine Principle lecture is being given. I think, unfortunately, Divine Principle lectures are not being given nearly as often as they should be right now. And also, Father emphasized the OSDP, the original substance of Divine Principle, that he gave through Reverend Yu Jong-ok, that as well. So, but it is the word. And I've often given the example asking, how do you take a pool of muddy water and turn it into a pool of clean water? And this is not something that I thought up. It comes from Father. And he says that the way you do that, if you want to take a pool of muddy water and make it into a pool of clear water, you just have to keep on funneling clear water into that pool. And eventually all the mud will be washed away, and what you'll have is clear water. So the clear water in this case, of course, is the Word of God. So that is why Hundoke, reading God's Word at the beginning of every day, is so important. And Father established that tradition, and he encouraged all families, all blessed families, to keep this tradition every morning. 5 o'clock is the time that he gave, and if you can do it at 5 o'clock, that's great. But at some point during the day, whether it's in the middle of the day or at the end of the day, husband and wife at least it would be good for them to sit down. And if the children are able to join, that's fantastic. Sit down and maybe for an hour, if possible, read the Word of God, and let that clear water sort of wash away some of the mud that is within our hearts. Okay. So we must be confident enough to be able to establish the kingdom of God on earth because we know in what way we can do that. Being confident is important. We know that this is going to happen. This earth was created by God, and it's not going to be destroyed. Now, yes, there will be natural disasters, right? The super volcano in Western United States may blow up yet, but the planet itself will remain. And I'm sure some portion of human beings will always remain either on this earth or perhaps in the future after we have resolved the problem with original sin. Perhaps we will also go out into the universe as well. Then, where do you belong? Are you going to go back to France, Germany, Italy, or wherever you came from, or to the fatherland of your desire? And everybody says, fatherland. There is no boundary among us. There is no Frenchman, German, Italian, British, Dutch, or Austrian here. But for the human fall, except for the human fall, do you think there would have come about so many languages? Language barriers were caused by the fall. The languages of the birds are the same all over the world. The language of the sheep, the cows, cats, and dogs is the same all over the world. With man alone, with human beings alone, there is a language barrier. Without that, I wouldn't have to use my interpreter. Right. And Father, in the Cheonsongyong, if you look, he says that, listen, if Adam had not fallen, then Adam's language would have become the language of the world, would have been the common language of the world. There's no reason, right, for there to develop other languages. Reason other languages developed because, well, according to the Bible, human beings were dispersed at the time of the Tower of Babel, but human beings lost contact with each other, and so different languages developed as a result. If human beings loved each other, they would not have wanted to be separated from each other. They would have wanted to come closer and cuddle together and talk together, and wherever they went, they would want to associate and go back and forth. And they could not have forgotten their own language. But if disharmony exists, if you quarrel, you don't want to be with the opponent. You want to go this way if he wants to go that way. And you would never want to eat whatever was made by your opponent. Disharmony was caused by the fall. And that makes sense, right? That makes sense. If human beings had actually become the perfect objects of God's love, then there would not have been this kind of disharmony. Cain would not have killed Abel, and all the other stuff would not have happened. And God in Genesis 6:6 would not have lamented that he had created human beings in the first place. And so there would have been one language and one culture centering on Adam. And now there is an Adam. Now Adam has been restored in the person of our true father, Reverend Sun Myung Moon. And so it's only natural that Adam's language, which is what? It's only natural that eventually Adam's language will become the common language for all of humanity. Not because it's forced upon people, okay, but because people want to have that connection with True Father and with the people who are around True Father. Father once, I think it's in the Cheonsongyong, yeah, I'm pretty sure it is, described Korean as an Adamic language and English as an archangelic language. And English being archangelic, I think probably he means that when you're studying science, for example, when you're studying that kind of knowledge and so forth, then English may be a more useful language. And knowledge, is what Lucifer excelled at. He had he knew the principle, and he was there when God was creating the world. So he knew how God created each and everything, and so he had a very deep scientific knowledge. But he did not have that, Shimjong, unity with God. He did not have the lineage of God. And this is why he was jealous, and why he was feeling a lack of love, which was, by the way, wrong. It was wrong for him to feel that way, because God's desire was that Archangel actually would feel more love, because Adam would receive God's love, and then he would add his own love to that and give it to the archangel. This was the original design that God had. And it wouldn't have worked out that way if only Eve and then Adam had maintained the commandment that they were given. Maintained the commandment that they were given. Anyway, so except for the human folk, human beings have used language other than the language of the first human ancestors. If it had not been for the human fall, all thought would have been concentrated on one thought, God. That would have been Adamism. Adamism, in other words, is true parentism. So even here in 1973, Father's introducing the concept of true parentism and Adamism. Since they have common parents, they want to talk. The way they do things, the way they think would have been the same. Is there anything else we can desire except Godism, true parentism, true brotherism, true femaleism, or true maleism? Was there any such thing as communism there? Those isms and ideologies have been canes to lean on for fallen man. Crutches, I think we would say today. They have been crutches to lean on for fallen man. But ultimately, originally, God is and will be left there. We have to recollect with a saddened heart that we have become Satan's children, enemy to God, enemy to God. Then are you ready to put your flesh into trial or not? Are you ready for difficulties and hardships? Do you want me to drive you out into the field of death? Would you want to die on the level of the individual or for the sake of the family? Family. Are you ready to die for the level of the family or on the level of the nation? Nation. Would you want me to drive you to the place of death on the level of the nation or on the level of the world? World. There have been fights and wars taking place in the world. Fights on the level of families and nations, but for what? But for what are we going to fight? We are to fight for the sake of the whole world on the side of God. God is fighting against the satanic force. Has there been any time in human history that all mankind has been mobilized in an all-out effort to fight for the cause of God against the evil power of Satan? Has there ever been such a time? No. Then would you desire to have such a time? When would you have it happen? Now. Where? Here. You are now mobilized for that purpose, to fight against Satan in an all-out effort. We must be armed with weapons so strong as to win over Satan. The biblical passage saying that those who want to lose their lives will find them, and those who want to gain their lives will lose them, can apply to the individual and family levels, but not quite on the national or worldwide level. Then who at all can carry out the mission to fight against the satanic force on the national or worldwide level by gathering all the people of the world, transcendent of race, creed, color, and anything else? In human history so far, men alone fought. So far, it has been this way because God's providence was that to locate a male being, it is true. But from now on, since in this time we have to locate the bride in the biblical sense, we have to mobilize female people too into the front line. Then in fighting against Satan, God would want the female people to win over the males. The female troops on God's side must win over even the male soldiers on the satanic side. In other words, win over or defeat. I guess win over is fine. I don't know if I haven't looked for the Korean version of this sermon, but it's possible that it does not exist in the 615 volumes. Often sermons that Father gave outside the United States were not included there. Anyway, I can check, but anyway, it would not really help you if I did find it. Okay, so female folks on God's side must be able to win over the satanic power of communism. Are you ready for that? Yes. What are you doing here? What you are doing here is done on the temporary basis. You are going to be sent out to the front line. What do you expect in the future? To be well-fed, well-clad, to enjoy your lives here? No. If you vacillate like this, and you look this way and that, then you are liable to be killed. In the battlefield, in the rain of the bullets, if you go straight ahead without minding whether you will be killed or not, then you will survive. But if you vacillate and try to dodge your way, you are apt to be killed. Especially, I warn the male folks against their being distracted. The female folks may think there are streams of luxurious cars, skyscrapers, well-to-do people, and I like American men better than the stinky stingy Dutchmen and the stiff Germans and the proud British and the narrow-minded French. I would like to marry an American man. They look so generous and abundant, and they think the way they think, say things, and act out things. But without being distracted or tempted by those things, you must be headed for one goal, staring at the target, focusing on the target, I guess. I mean, in this way alone will we win the war. Are you going to be courageous or cowardly? Courageous. If you are ready to do that, if you are confident to do that, will you please hold up your hands? All right, and then he sort of concludes the sermon for this day. I'll leave this subject until tomorrow. You must know that in detail, so that you will have a clear picture of how there has been the removal of stained blood all throughout human history. God's work through all the limited personages of the Bible. I can even give you all those things in a contracted form, and since maybe abbreviated form, and since I am an expert in that line, I can maybe give you all those things in 10 minutes. And in that case, I'm going to talk as a waterfall. So I am going to leave it until tomorrow. Now that you have been resolved by holding up your hands, you are resolved to go ahead and fight against satanic power in the battlefield at the cost of your life. I am pleased with that. I trust you, and I watch you. All right, so that was a speech that's dated here January 18th, 1973. And then the next one comes on January 19th, 1973. And then the next one is January 21st, 1973. So basically a series of 3 sermons given over a 4-day period. And so next Wednesday, we will go into this second sermon, and we'll see how far we can get there. But it is the whole point of what we are doing is to have as many people as possible, and hopefully the entire world, all 8 billion people, go through the holy blessing and receive the holy blessing and go through the process of changing the blood lineage. And I don't know if Father's going to outline this process later on. Whereas the process, this is for first generation people, in other words, who are coming to True Father after being in, a satanic lineage. The process begins with the holy wine ceremony. And in this ceremony is conducted in the reverse order of the fall, where the restored Adam, Father, through his designated heir and successor, or through someone who is commissioned to play that role, such as a pastor or someone like that, gives a cup of Father's holy wine to a bride. And when she receives that, she's in the position of the fallen Eve. And she takes half of that cup. She drinks half of the cup. And then she turns and then gives the cup to the groom, to her groom. And he is in the position of the fallen archangel. And then by drinking the remaining wine in that cup, he is restored to the position of the Son of God. And then they are then qualified to receive the holy blessing, which is a ceremony where God is giving where Christ is giving one of his brides to a son of God. So the first stage is the holy wine ceremony. The second stage is the holy blessing. And then the holy blessing, after the holy blessing, there's an indemnity stick ceremony. I know some people try to rename it, but let's stick to the closest English words to what Father actually calls it. And he doesn't call it anything other than the indemnity stick ceremony, okay? So let's not water it down, all right? Where, the husband, the newly blessed bride and groom and bride, strike each other with hopefully a baseball bat. I think baseball bat is the orthodox way of doing it. Again, I see some people using, little something that's going to break very easily. No, baseball bat is the tradition. Strike each other on the buttocks, on the fat, so that you're not actually causing any damage. And this harkens back to Jacob's fight against the spiritual being at the ford of Jabbok, where where his joint was knocked out. But it signifies a commitment to remain faithful in the marriage, and also commitment to not to exercise violence in the marriage at all. And then there is a 40-day period of separation. In other words, groom and bride do not, run off in a car that says just married and they go off to Hawaii or the Bahamas or someplace and have lots of sex over the next week or two or something like that. No, there's 40 days of separation, 40 days where there is no sex. Call it separation, but they can be in the same house. I've even seen people be in the same bed. Of course, I've seen people be in the same bed, and then one day somebody rolls over and there's failure. So they have to be wise. They have to be wise. But anyway, there's 40 days of abstention from sex, right? And then at the end of those 40 days, there's a prayer someone prays over the couple, and that someone would be someone in a sort of a chief priest type of position, a pastor, or maybe a more senior blessed central family, someone like that can pray. And then once that prayer is given, then there is the 3-day ceremony. And the 3-day ceremony is where the groom and bride are going through 3 consecutive nights or days, actually 3 consecutive 24-hour periods, where during each period they have intercourse one time in each period. And in the first 2 24-hour periods, when insertion occurs, the woman is on top, and then in the third 24-hour period, the man is on top at the time of insertion. So, and then once that is done, then you're home free, and you can have sexual relations any time you want, any way you want, and just have fun, and just maintain fidelity within the marriage. Okay, make lots of babies. So that is the process. That is the actual process, the mechanics, shall we say, of the change of blood lineage. And Father, right here, is going through the more spiritual and the philosophical background to that whole process that was developed. Yes. Okay. So. And I want to emphasize that when people are blessed, the government does not sign their blessing ceremony form. Okay. So it is optional whether you choose to register this marriage with the government, with the state. The state does not have authority to register or not register a certain marriage, right? And so, for example, I think even until recently, there was at least one country where interracial marriage was not allowed, but that does not apply to us. Or even in Korea, until very recently, marriage was not allowed between a man and a woman who shared the same ancestor on the father's side, going back centuries. If you came from a common ancestor 500, 600, 700, 800 years ago, you could not be married. The state would not allow you to be married. But again, I don't think that's true anymore in Korea. But again, that kind of thing does not apply to God's marriages, because it is only we are blessed in the presence of God. We are blessed by God, and God is a sort of a third partner in that blessing. We are promising to God. There are 4 promises that we make, right? And the first promise is that we will create an eternal bond, an eternal relationship of husband and wife, eternal relationship of husband and wife. And that means that this relationship goes beyond death. And that is how we can be together in the spirit world. Like, of course, in the process of building a family together, we need to perfect, or I prefer to say complete, our love as the or our 심정 of husband and wife, of the conjugal 심정 being the irrepressible impulse of the heart to invest love and joy, or love into an object partner, so as to experience love and joy. 심정 flows from the heart, and it is love that flows from the heart. So it is the expression of 심정. So we need to, as husband and wife, we need to develop that 심정 together. And that means what? That means learning how to love my spouse. And what do I need to do in order to love my spouse? Well, I need to know her, right? I need to know her. It's only when I know her that I can truly love her. Because it's only when I know her that I can give her what she needs and wants, but more specifically, perhaps more importantly, what she needs. What she wants to, but what she needs. But I need to understand what that is. And so I have spent my lifetime studying my spouse. And I know her better than I did yesterday, and I hope I'll know more about her tomorrow than I do today. But as I know more about her through various experiences, through trial and error sometimes, that I'm able to sort of build a database, so to speak, in my mind. Okay, she doesn't like this. Okay, all right. And that's how we can complete our conjugal love on a completion level. And that's why the king says that you have to go on husband and wife dates at least once a week. At least once a week. Because it's there that you are exchanging information, right? If you're just living together and not really doing anything together, then you're really not developing as a husband and wife. And you're missing an opportunity to learn about your spouse before you go to spirit world. Then, of course, to develop the parental 심정, what does that require? What does that need? How do you do that? Well, you have to know your children. The same thing. And so the king encourages us to do one-on-one training with each individual child. It's good to have, family outings and stuff like that, but father and mother taking one child out to wherever they want to go, whether it's McDonald's or Red Robin or wherever it is, and say, okay, here, we're going to do what you want to do today. Right? That's how you build that one-on-one relationship with children. And that is what will help them stay anchored in the family when things get tough, especially during the teen years, and especially when they're in school and they're being taught by their teachers that their parents don't know anything, and that they need to become more knowledgeable than their parents so that they can save their parents from this evil cult that they're in. Speaking from experience, all right? All right, that's all I have for today. I will see you next Wednesday on this change of blood lineage. Meanwhile, we'll be back tomorrow to the LA riots and whatever else is going on. China and the United States have come to an agreement in London, and we'll see how that develops over the next 24 hours as well. Okay. God bless, Godspeed. May his kingdom come quickly.